First one, over here. What literary theme does Airman point to for you guys?
Well, the first sign was how he changed the water into wine.
Yeah, Jesus changed the water into wine. We read that story, and at the end of that story it says, and this was Jesus' first sign. Okay?
And it says how his second sign was how he healed the official's son.
Yeah, we read that story as well. And what's it say at the end of that? At the end of the first sign it says, and that was Jesus' first sign. At the end of the second healing, what does it say at the end?
That was the second sign.
Yeah, that was Jesus' second sign. Now, what else?
Because of like the time in between, people said they saw him like do more signs.
Yeah, and John 2:23, when he was in Jerusalem during the Passover festival, and many believed in his name because they saw the signs he was doing.
Yeah.
And that would imply that he was doing signs in between the first one and the second one.
Yeah. It says, 1, Jesus turned water into wine. That was his first sign. 2, Jesus did a bunch of signs. 3, Jesus did his second sign. Right? That doesn't really make sense if the author here just sat down and wrote out the story. It would make sense if he had a collection of signs all by itself, right? Remember the book of, the collection of Q only had what in it? Q only had what? It was similar to the Gospel of Thomas in this respect. We haven't looked at the Gospel of Thomas, but Q and the Gospel of Thomas are similar in that they only contain what? Well, I'll just tell you. Well, that's what Q is, but what Q contains is just sayings. Jesus said. There's no stories in Q. There's no miracle stories, there's no healing stories, there's no death and resurrection. It's just Jesus said, Jesus said, Jesus said. Well, presumably, the author of the Gospel of John had a book that just had 7 miracles in it. The 7 signs. And probably what he did was that he wrote out his gospel and then he was like, okay, I'm going to take the first sign and I'm going to slot it in right there. I'm going to take the second sign and I'm going to slot it in, cut it, paste it right into there. So that if he did that, that would explain why it says Jesus did his first sign, and then it says he did a whole bunch of signs, and then it says he did his second sign. That would make sense if he was piecing together a gospel narrative with a sign source. And that's what scholars call it, a sign source. These 7 signs, they presume that John had a source that just had those 7 stories in it. Does that make sense? No? Yes? Second group. How is there a literary theme in the section you guys looked at?
In John 2:23, Jesus is having a conversation with Nicodemus, and they're in Jerusalem, and then in 3:22 it says, after this, Jesus and his disciples went into the land of Judea, but they were already there.
Yeah.